Hey everyone, welcome back to Jonny Builds, where this week I made a bar cart out of steel and glass fiber reinforced concrete. This is a collaboration I did with my buddy, Mike Clifford from Modustrial Maker. I got to help Mike make a giant lamp from a reclaimed beam. It came out awesome. The video to that is over on his channel. Make sure you check it out. For this project, I used a total of 40 foot of 3/4 inch square tube steel and 20 foot of 5/16 steel rod. And I got right to work cutting these down to size. I started first with these 30-inch long stretchers and cut them on my cold cutting metal miter saw. And then next I could cut down the 4 25-inch legs. The first thing I'm going to put together are these two side frames where the bottom stretcher is inset 2 inches from the bottom. And I like to weld my frames by making a jig like you see me doing here with this MDF. This just ensures the two sides match up. Before I got started welding, I cleaned up all the cut ends with a flap disc. Now I could load all the pieces into the jig and get started welding. I'm using a MIG welder running argon gas. I tacked up the first side and then flipped the workpiece over before running full beads on the second side. Then I came back to that first side and ran full beads on it as well. And last I used a flap disc to clean up the first frame before moving on to the second frame, and the process was exactly the same. And sometimes you just got to do whatever it takes to get in good position for the weld. Now I can connect the two side frames with these 16-inch front and back stretchers. I modified my jig and flipped the frames over and connected all the pieces. I used these magnets to hold the pieces in place and at 90 degrees. After tacking these pieces in place, I came back and welded up the main portion of the frame assembly. The lower shelf is 12 inches wide and sits 8 inches off the bottom of the bar cart. And then these shelf supports get welded up to this 21.5 inch tall upright. Now I could get started on the enclosure, which is made from the 5/16 rod. I knew I wanted something decorative and sort of Art Deco, but I really didn't know what the design was going to be until here you see me just drawing it out, figuring it out as I go, and I'm really pleased with the design I ended up with. I think it looks kind of cool. Kind of looks like a spider. And then I started cutting down the 5/16 rod to fit the template. I really don't have exact dimensions. I just went based off of the template design that I came up with and cut everything to match. And once I had all the pieces cut, I could just start welding them together piece by piece. And I found that the steel rod was easier to weld than the square tube because it was a thicker material and more forgiving. I didn't have to worry about burning through it. Also, I cut these end pieces a little bit long so I can come back and trim them to fit. I used a couple pieces of scrap flat bar as spacers and then welded the spider in place. The remaining 5/16 steel rod was used to create these rails that keep items that are on the bar cart from falling off. The handle is made from these 3 pieces of 3/4 inch steel tube. The two side posts are 4 inches long and have a 45-degree side and a 90-degree side. They get welded to the 16-inch long handle, and I also made a couple end caps that cover up the holes. I did this off camera. And then I could weld the handle to the bar cart itself. I added shelf supports and 4 casters, and it was time to take this baby up to Chicago. So I got all my stuff packed, loaded up the bar cart and the timber reclaimed beam that I was taking Mike, and started heading north. Now, I'm not exactly sure how far it is from Oklahoma City to Chicago.
It's 106 miles to Chicago.
Well, it's a tad further than that. When I got to Chicago, we offloaded the reclaimed beam I took Mike, and we got right to work on the concrete forms. And Mike had this really clever way of creating the concrete forms that would match the dimensions of my bar cart exactly. We cut down strips of this plastic board that's the same kind of material that campaign signs are made out of. It was okay if the dimensions of these pieces that we cut were a little bit off, because as you glued them together, we would put them to where they butted all the way up against the inside of the frame, and thus creating a perfect replica of the shape of the inner dimensions. And to begin making the form, I cut down strips of melamine that were just a little bit under an inch wide. Now that we've got our templates made and our melamine cut, we can start putting the forms together. We're just using double-sided tape to adhere these down to one piece of melamine, and this allowed us to make the top and bottom, the two bigger shelves, on the same sheet. And then we came back with a little bit of hot glue to reinforce the outside edges of the forms, and again, these were super sturdy and strong. With the forms all put together, we could apply paste wax to the inside of the form, which is going to allow the silicone to peel right off once it dries. The inside edges of the form get a bead of silicone all the way around and up the sides, and then we came back with a fondant tool, a cake making tool, and used that to scrape out the edges and get a really nice smooth surface. It's basically like having a round over on a piece of wood, and gives a nice clean edge to that finished concrete top. We left the silicone to cure overnight and then came back the next day and peeled up all the excess. It's important to find out who has the fastest skills at peeling silicone, and Mike just barely beat me, barely. And like always, the loser of the silicone race has to don the silicone mustache. The paste wax works great to make sure the silicone doesn't stick to the form, but you have to clean it all out with mineral spirits before you actually pour the concrete. The majority of the work when using GFRC is the prep work that takes place, building the forms and getting everything ready. But once you actually start mixing the concrete, everything goes pretty fast and you've got to be prepared. We mixed up a small batch of concrete, and before adding the glass fibers, we pulled out a couple cups and added black pigment to one of them to use for the marble effect in a little bit. Then we came back and added glass fibers to that first batch that we made. Using the black pigmented concrete we set aside earlier, we added it to the top of the form and swirled it around to create sort of a marble effect. Once we had the desired marble-like look that we were going for, we came back with the glass fiber reinforced concrete and pressed it down into the forms, making sure to get it in all the corners. We started working on the other two forms using the same technique of first putting in the black pigmented concrete, swirling it around to make it look like marble, and then coming back and packing in that glass fiber reinforced mix down and behind it, making sure to get it in all the corners and patting down the top of the form smooth. After 36 hours, we came back with this diamond grinding disc and smoothed out the bottom of the form and began the demolding process. To get it out of the form, we just broke away the edges that were taped down, cut away the silicone that was left, and then flipped the piece over for the big reveal, and man, it looked awesome. We popped the other two concrete shelves out of their forms, did a little bit of wet sanding to get the surface smooth, and then finished it with a concrete sealer. I couldn't be more pleased with the way these marble concrete shelves turned out. They're super unique and they really make the bar cart stand out. So a big shout out to Mike Clifford for having me up in his shop and doing this collaboration. Now I took the bar cart outside and sanded everything down and used some acetone to clean all the steel to get it ready for paint. I'm using Montana Gold spray paint for this bar cart, and I started first with a couple coats of the primer. I then hit it with a couple coats of Montana Gold copper colored spray paint, which makes it really stand out against those white concrete marble tops. I added the shelves to the bar cart and used clear silicone to attach the tabletop and the two shelves. This stuff is plenty strong to hold everything in place, and I can just cut it away if I need to pack it up and move it at some point. Okay, man, that's it.
Yeah,
Cheers.
good times.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for checking this one out. Now, I really like the way this bar cart turned out. The marbleized look of the concrete and the way it contrasts with the copper painted steel, it's very eye-catching to me. So Mike sort of specializes in this type of concrete, glass fiber reinforced concrete. Now, Mike, can you tell us a little bit more about the benefits of GFRC?
Sure, well, you're looking at a couple of them right now. One, because it's so strong, you can make it really thin. We made these about 3/4 of an inch thick, which kept this bar part down to about 75 pounds in total. The other benefit here that you're seeing is an incredibly smooth surface that pops right out of the form in just a few seconds of sanding and it's ready to go. If you want to know more, I've got a bunch of videos using it over on my channel, so that's there if you need it.
Yeah, make sure you check out his channel. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that.
Hey man, thanks for coming up.
I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up and make sure you check out the beam light that we made over on Mike's channel. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to his channel. He's got some really cool projects.
And you also got to, of course, make sure you subscribe and bell Jonny Bills. So who wouldn't do that?
So thanks for checking this one out, and we'll see you back here next time.